March 13th, 1938. A few of us here might remember that day. At State Conference in Las Vegas, Elder Melvin J. Ballard of the Council of 12 organized the Boulder City Ward. Lawrence Wortley, the branch president, was called as the bishop. Most of us here have become members of the ward at a later date. The one thing we all have in common is that each of us has memories of the many events that have taken place in the ward since that day 75 years ago. With this in mind, we asked anyone that has been a member of the ward to submit pictures, stories, or fond memories that they might have about the ward. The preface found in the history of the Black Mountain Stake has a statement that we found to be true as we began this collection process. It states, "Each member of our stake has their own memory of an activity or event that happened in their past. Physical, mental, and spiritual experiences we have had as we were growing up have formed our personalities and characteristics, as well as our memories of what happened. It has been almost impossible to find even two people who can agree completely on some dates and the people who were involved as our stake grew to the position of respect it holds in our community today. Many of the dates do not even agree." With that in mind, we wish to thank all that contributed to this effort. It has been a labor of love, joy, and learning. We were blessed with many contributors and submissions. Again, we thank you very much. Now, as you watch, we hope you too will remember those special times that are a part of the Boulder City Ward history.
The Boulder Dam Project, which was responsible for the creation of the government installation of Boulder City, began in 1931, 7 years before the ward was established. It is only fitting to share what happened from the beginning of Boulder City. The gathering of people for the construction of the Great Boulder Dam Project also meant the gathering of a spiritually minded and motivated citizenry destined to permanently influence the tenor of the developing community. Inevitably, also a segment of the population would include representatives of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or Mormons. After all, the great structure was being erected on the very fringe of Mormon country. Each Sunday, if they had enough money for gas, family members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints residing in Boulder City traveled by car to Las Vegas to attend their church meetings. This meant that they had to enter through the gates of Railroad Pass with Bureau of Reclamation guards checking the families for identification. This was a long drive for these devout saints to be able to worship their Heavenly Father. Being able to attend church was important to these families. It helped them endure the undue hardships they were experiencing. This was during the Depression. There were unbearable heat, no money. Many were living away from their loved ones. This place started as a tent city, and you had to carry your own water, all just to survive.
The sisters were instrumental in getting a branch of the church organized. They sorely missed the spiritual comforts and inspiration of the church which they had enjoyed in their former homes. These church-hungry sisters canvassed the area to seek out other members of the church. Then they conferred with Bishop Bunker of the Las Vegas ward and asked advice on how to proceed to establish their own branch. These devoted sisters were Josie Bay, Velma Peterson, Ida Pierce, Catherine Manning, and Leah Foscarine. Their first meetings were held in the home of Sister Pierce. About the middle of March 1932, a few of the Latter-day Saint members located in Boulder City got together and invited Bishop Brian L. Bunker and his counselors to come from Las Vegas and conduct a sacrament meeting in a small white frame building which was used as a schoolhouse. After that, meetings were held each week. conducted by Bishop Bunker or someone from Las Vegas chosen by him.
On April 24, 1932, with 23 present in the temporary schoolhouse, Bishop Bunker conducted the services. Stake President Willard L. Jones and Counselor F. Edgar Menier of the Moapa Stake presided. President Willard Jones organized Boulder City as a dependent branch of the Las Vegas Ward. Brian L. Bunker was bishop, with Lawrence Wortley the presiding elder in Boulder City.
The next Sunday, with 117 people present, they held their meeting at the Park Mortuary, or as another history calls it, Garrison Mortuary, whatever the name. Some Sunday mornings we had to move the caskets to the other room before the meeting commenced. Saints in the city were delighted to finally have a place to hold their meeting. The Las Vegas Ward was building a new building and were willing to let us have their old Ward Chapel building. The First Presidency of the church arranged to pay the Las Vegas Ward for their building and gave us $800 to have the building moved from Las Vegas to Boulder, where we obtained a lot to put it on. We were excited about the prospect of having our own building and not meeting in a mortuary.
Within 2 months, Boulder City became an independent branch. Lawrence Wortley was sustained as the branch president, Stuart Eccles the first counselor, and Daniel Tyler the second counselor. Brother Stuart Eccles, the first counselor, moved back to Salt Lake City in 1936. In 1938, he helped open the first Deseret Industries under the direction of Harold B. Lee. His years in Boulder City helped mold him for that job.
Then on June 5, 1932, President Wortley presented the motion of moving the old Las Vegas Chapel to Boulder City to the branch. The motion was sustained. Boulder Branch Presidency purchased the old Las Vegas Chapel for $1,750. Next came the monumental task of moving the old Las Vegas Chapel to Boulder City. First they removed all the windows and doors. They also sawed the building in half and also had to saw off the roof pinnacle. Let me remind you, all this sawing was done by hand. No power tools were available at this time. Then they used huge jacks and lifted the church to put big square timbers under it. They raised it higher and higher. Finally, it was mounted on a long trailer hooked to a truck. As the truck went down the road, men sat on top of the building and lifted the power and phone lines that were overhead. The first half of the church arrived in Boulder City on June 29, 1932, and the other half on July 1, 1932. The Ward House was remodeled and more rooms added to the back. On July 31, 1932 at 7 o'clock p.m., the first sacrament meeting was held in their very own building. Total contributions to the building fund to date were $631.35. These were industrious days. The school and Episcopal church were also being built on the very same street.
Church members are encouraged to be civic-minded. This from the election of 1932. Sisters Doris Hinson, Georgia Humphrey, and Ida Browder were appointed to be inspectors of election to count the votes at the church building.
Look at all the sisters attending Relief Society in 1933. Boulder City was growing. The people were very industrious. Yet, along with all the work, they needed recreation. Providing this recreation was a way for the LDS people to earn the monies needed to pay for their new chapel. A number of social events such as Relief Society bazaars, primary parties, MIA dances were given at various times to reduce the branch indebtedness. A Halloween party given by the Relief Society was one of the year's outstanding achievements. The branch also gave a number of public parties and outings on the river, some with crowds reaching as high as 250 and 300 people.
Early in the year 1934, a united effort was made to pay off the indebtedness of the branch. At a special meeting of the priesthood, enough money was pledged and soon thereafter paid to settle all indebtedness on the chapel. Branch President Lawrence Wortley asked Stake President Willard L. Jones if he would ask President Heber J. Grant to dedicate our branch chapel. President Jones suggested to Elder Wortley he do the inviting. He did not believe the president would accept, and he didn't want to disappoint Elder Wortley. President Wortley wrote to President Heber J. Grant inviting him to dedicate the building. President Grant accepted and gave him the date of March 25, 1934. Stake President Jones and all concerned were delighted at his acceptance. Boulder City and Las Vegas were excited about this great honor coming to Boulder City. It was all the branch could talk about. President Heber J. Grant and other church authorities were coming to our humble little branch in Boulder City, Nevada.
The eventful day, March 24, 1934, finally arrived for everyone in Boulder City. There was to be no Sunday school, only this dedication session. A large, overstuffed chair brought from someone's home had been put on the stand for President Heber J. Grant. Just as the meeting was to begin, President Grant noticed the Episcopal priest from across the street standing at the front entrance. President Grant asked Branch President Wortley who he was. President Heber J. Grant had a seat made available on the stand in the front row and invited the Episcopal priest to sit with them for the dedicatory service. The building was bulging with all the benches tightly filled, extra chairs everywhere, and people standing in the aisle and hanging out the windows. The dedicatory service commenced, and finally President Heber J. Grant, our prophet of God, presented the dedicatory prayer. As the prophet started to speak, the congregation could feel the outpouring of the Spirit of the Lord. A peaceful quietness could be felt by all. Even the children could feel this special spirit and cuddled in their parents' arms. In his prayer, he gave the branch a beautiful blessing to be received if we kept the Lord's commandments. It was a wonderful spiritual meeting. Our Heavenly Father's Spirit could be felt by all. This was the first time many of the saints had been in the presence of the prophet to partake of his Spirit and hear him speak. After the meeting, the congregation went outside for our historical picture. Everyone was dressed in their finery because they knew they were going to be in a picture with the prophet Heber J. Grant. It took quite a while to have the 205 people placed for the picture. The small children were seated on the curb. The larger children were instructed to kneel behind them. A row of seats were placed in the middle for President Heber J. Grant and other authorities.
President Heber J. Grant and his party were taken to Boulder Dam for a VIP special tour to see this wonderful edifice. Elder Joseph Anderson was one of the members of this party. He reminisced of this occasion and drew an analogy from it during a conference address in April of 1974. In it he stated, "Many years ago, with President Heber J. Grant and others, it was my privilege to witness the work that was being carried forward in the construction of the Hoover Dam near Las Vegas, Nevada. Some of those present at the time, including President Grant, went to the top of the dam on a makeshift elevator as far as it was completed at that time, and then they climbed a ladder still higher where the concrete was being poured. This concrete, which consisted of boulders and rocks, was held together by cement. Without the cement, which held the rocks together, the dam could not have been made effective in holding back the great stream of water." We all have great streams of water that affect our lives.
July 27, 1935. The Mormon Tabernacle Choir, the largest choir in the world, climaxed the celebration of the 88th anniversary of the Mormons coming to Utah when they visited Boulder Dam after a Western tour. The choir sang many songs from atop the dam.
September 30th, 1935, Franklin Roosevelt dedicated the dam. Leonard Stubbs, age 14, was there in the front row during this dedication. That same week, the church got an organ for the church. It was the kind you had to pump the pedals to make it play.
September 30th, 1936. Many of the brethren who have been working on the Boulder Dam for many years have been laid off lately. Unless they get work in Boulder City, before long they will have to find work elsewhere. December 31st, 1936. There has been a decline in membership. Many have moved away, others have come, and the branch is holding its own very well, considering the great decline in work. Many thought that the Boulder Dam boom was over and that Las Vegas, the small oasis in the desert, would revert to a railroad village. Well, in 1934, when President Grant was in Boulder City, he was visiting with Dr. Frank Wheelwright and some other members of the branch. During this visit, he said, "Boulder City will never get any smaller than it is today." This really surprised the members, as the 6 companies were selling homes for $200 and $400 with big parcels of land. Many members did not have much money and did not feel comfortable in investing in land at that time. Dr. Wheelwright took President Grant's words as truth, and instead of selling, bought more property. Now, in 1936, the outlook was beginning to look bleak. Today, we can see that President Grant was correct. Boulder City had not gotten smaller, but grown to its current size. We are living in a prophecy come true.
On February 20th, 1937, the chapel burned, receiving considerable damage. President Wortley took charge of the rebuilding and made it a security project using some of the unemployed members to rebuild it again. He did a very good job. It was rebuilt and ready for use by March 19th, 1937 at a cost of about $2,200. During the interim, the branch was invited to use the Episcopal Church House across the street. Probably because of the kindness President Heber J. Grant showed the Episcopal bishop 4 years earlier at the dedication of the chapel. June 20th through 27th, an air cooling system was installed in the ward chapel at a cost of about $100.
On Sunday, March 13, 1938, Boulder City Branch was made a ward by Elder Melvin J. Ballard of the Council of the 12 at a conference held in Las Vegas. Lawrence Wortley was ordained as bishop and set apart to preside over the Boulder City ward. The branch had grown enough, over 300 people, to become a ward. The definition of a ward is a community in which members develop friendships and help each other. Members try to follow the teachings of an ancient prophet who taught that when we are baptized, we are willing to bear one another's burdens, that they might be light, and willing to mourn with those that mourn, yea, and comfort those that stand in need of comfort. Through service, members lift one another's burdens and express their love.
Today the ward is 75 years old. It has also grown from 1 ward to 4 wards in these past 75 years. Again, we asked for pictures and memories from members of the ward, past and present. Now we are going to share a few of them, because if we shared them all, we could be here for days. We hope that by seeing these pictures, hearing the stories, and visiting with those gathered today, your mind will be stimulated, and perhaps you will go home and get out your journal and record some of your own special thoughts about the history of the ward.
The old chapel provided a place for many happy and faith-promoting incidents in the lives of the early saints of Boulder City. The main room was quite large, and the front of the room was a stage with red plush curtains, and there was a portable pulpit. The choir risers sat behind the chairs for the bishopric and speakers. The organ console was on the floor on one side, and the sacrament table on the other. The room was really efficient. On one hand, it was a chapel, then it could function as a theater, and when the chairs were moved out, it was a dance hall.
For summer air conditioning, they had 2 large ceiling fans located about 1/3 of the way from the top of the main part of the assembly hall, plus opening the windows from the bottom and hoping there was a breeze. Brother Nathan Stout had a yardstick with a notch cut in one end. About halfway through sacrament meeting, which was at night, or testimony meeting, which was late in the morning, he would go around and turn on the fans to move the hot air around. It was common practice to move Sunday school classes to the shade of a tree in the nearby park. They often held the program part of the evening in common with other religious groups in the community.
For heat in the winter, they had a big pot-bellied wood and coal-burning stove. It took some time to warm the building. It could be warm at the entrance area and cold in the rest of the building, or hot at the entrance and warm elsewhere. Bob Larson recalls, "There was a freestanding furnace in the foyer that was supposed to heat the building. It didn't. I recall shivering through a Sunday school class in the far back room at the first building. All of us kids huddled together around a tiny electric space heater because it was a gazillion degrees below zero outside. I don't remember the lesson being taught, but the lesson I learned was to dress warmer for next Sunday."
An ordinance performed often in the church is baptism. Do you remember the day you were baptized? From the notes of Leonard Stubbs. One of the unique parts of our chapel was the concrete baptismal font. It was constructed under the rear classroom floor. To perform the ordinance, a section of the floor was lifted up, which was hinged on one side. To keep it from falling down, it was fastened to the wall. After the baptism, the font was drained and the floor was then replaced, covering the font. Not all people knew there was a font under the floor. My future wife, Rose Carolyn Higgins Stubbs, was baptized in it November of 1938, a convert at the age of 15.
Bishop Wortley was transferred from the community in 1939. The members of the ward sustained Clifford M. Knudsen to fill the vacant position. When he was transferred to Washington, D.C. in 1940, Dudley Levitt was called to fill the position and serve in that capacity until he was moved from the community, and R. Owen Gibson was ordained bishop in 1943. In that year, ward membership was recorded at 340, with prospects for an increase in membership because of World War II activity. The renewed stress on building accommodations led ward leaders to initiate action to raise funds for a new building. Subscriptions were sought from the membership, and fundraising projects were undertaken and continued for 10 years under Bishop Herman Nelson and Bishop Leonard Stubbs before funds were sufficient to begin construction. A memory from Roy Atkin about fundraising. I recall one evening of a ward dinner in the chapel. Sister Manning was a true comedian. She told this joke. The bishop asked for everyone to sacrifice and donate to the building fund until it hurt. When counting the donations, he noticed a prominent member had donated 25 cents. The bishop contacted the member, name withheld, and said, "I told everyone to give until it hurt, and you only donated 25 cents. The member stated, "I can't stand that much pain." This has remained in my mind for almost 65 years, so I knew early on the sacrifices it took in time and money to have a new chapel.
The church put on a gold and green ball for the community every year, and we usually held it in the school gym, which is now the recreation center. This was a really big deal, complete with decorations and an orchestra. We even put on a floor show during intermission. The orchestra often consisted of local members of the community, usually LDS, and we often saw Clark Higgins with his bass viola or violin, Tommy Nelson on the trumpet, and D-Town on the drums. Billy Bates often played the piano, according to Brent Caldwell. I remember one year someone decided that the punch for the dance could be put into galvanized garbage cans, new and clean of course, and no one understood that citrus-based punch was acidic and would react with the garbage can. We poisoned the whole town.
Sometime in the 40s, the chapel was jacked up and the earth was removed to make a basement and rooms for junior Sunday school and a scout room and many extra rooms. Roy Atkins remembers that his sister Floyd Dawn Atkin McKay was the Sunday school chorister, and he was the accompanist on the organ. Brent Caldwell also stated, "It was a pleasant place, unless someone forgot to turn off the water for the grass on Saturday. If that happened, on Sunday morning the basement would be flooded, and the priesthood would spend their time bailing out the basement."
In 1944, Bishop Brian Bunker, a prominent LDS church leader in Las Vegas, was instrumental in getting the Boulder Dam Area Boy Scout Council formed and functioning. The Boulder City Ward was designated as Troop Number 1 and Pack Number 1 of that council, and still has the honor of remaining Scout Troop Number 1 and Pack Number 1 to this day. The council name has changed, but the troop and pack are still going strong, with leaders like Charlie Hunter, Cal Smith, Tony Worley, John Norman, Mark Graff, and Curtis Merrill. Thousands of boys have been influenced by the many scouting leaders. A scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, reverent, and hungry.
Oh, the stories that can be told. Remember the lake trips? Eldon Clothier remembers one in particular. He and another leader and about 6 boys, because of work schedules, were the last boat to get on the lake for this particular outing. The others had gone earlier with all the camping supplies, food, other boys, and leaders. It got late and soon it was dark. Here they were out in the middle of the lake and had no clue where the other group was. This was before the days of cell phones, too. For some reason they thought they knew where they were going, but the darker it got, the less sure they became. The leaders decided that they would go to the nearest shore and stop for the night. They did not want to risk crashing the boat in the dark. They made it to shore and then realized they had no supplies with them. All they had was a couple of cans of sardines, some crackers, and a bottle of mustard. Needless to say, it was a very light meal that night, and it was soon realized that sardines weren't so bad if you coated them with mustard. The next morning, the other boats found a very tired and hungry group of scouts. And don't forget the snipe hunts. Ask Scoutmaster Tony Worley about the time the boys brought real live snipes back to the campfire, super excited and showing them to all the other scout leaders. There were a bunch of surprise scout leaders that night.
Even more stories can be told about Catalina Island, Uinta's High Adventure Camps, San Diego beaches, Camp Geronimo, sleeping in the teepee, winter camps, Pinewood Derby races, and rain gutter regattas.
These are Cub Scouts from 1952.
The Cub Scouts now have the core values of cooperation, compassion, resourcefulness, respect, health and fitness, honesty, courage, citizenship, responsibility, faith, positive attitude, and perseverance. There are den meetings, pack meetings, hikes, activities, day camps, and more. Scouting is a wonderful way to help boys become men. I do believe Scouts and Mythbusters have something in common.
Each week in the Boulder City News, the activities of the ward were published. In 1945, George Albert Smith became president of the church. Also in 1945, the plans were unveiled to build a new church building in Boulder City. Bishop Gibson stated, "It will be a building that will make Boulder City proud. It will have a sanctuary and recreation hall, ample facilities for basketball and for dancing, as well as a stage. It is hoped a structure costing from $60,000 to $100,000 can be planned and constructed within the next 2 years."
In 1948, Herman Nelson is sustained as bishop.
April 9th, 1951, David O. McKay becomes president of the church.
In 1952, Leonard Stubbs is sustained as bishop.
Lily Golf went to girls' camp at Lee's Canyon with girls from the whole state. Eva Guyette recalled, "When I moved to Boulder City in 1946, there were still some barracks in place from Camp Williston. There was a large barrack running east and west, right behind where our 5th Street Chapel now stands. It was used by a government agency. A little west of our church parking lot was another barrack running north and south, and it was used by the Park Service. Another half barrack stood, which is now the high school parking lot. There was another barrack that was used as the camp's recreation hall where they played games and held public dances. When I came to town, it was called the Little Theater. Though most of the barracks were torn down to make room for the 5th Street Chapel, the Little Theater was demolished around 1958.
March 23, 1954. Ground is broken for the new Boulder City LDS Chapel. Look at all the people attending this exciting and wonderful event. This picture has Bishop Stubbs, a state councilor, President Myers, and Cliff Segerbloom.
In this picture are Bishop Stubbs, a state councilor, and President Myers.
Riley Denning is in the top 2 pictures on this slide.
Ursula Ramsey recalls, "I can remember when the men were constructing the new building. All the wives would bring lunch over to the building and we could all eat together outside. We sat and told fun family history stories and talked about the woes of the day and enjoyed each other's company as the building was erected. We all felt so proud when it was finished and that we had really accomplished a good work."
Albert Edwards and Frosty Trosdall, part of the crew working here. Up on the rooftop, ward members' feet. Wait! Richard Stubbs remembers, before the roof was put on, they held a dance in the part of the church which is now the chapel. Inside the chapel, no pews and stars overhead.
It was a good thing that the new building was being built. Brent Caldwell states, "I remember a funny experience with the old building. One Sunday night there was a less active family who attended sacrament meeting. On Monday afternoon I went up to practice on the organ, and the entire ceiling was on the floor. Bishop Stubbs was there and told me that he watched a crack in the ceiling grow and widen throughout the meeting, hoping it wouldn't fall until after sacrament meeting, so the less active family wouldn't think the ceiling fell because of them."
Members and non-members alike worked side by side to finish this wonderful structure. Much of the brickwork was done by Brother Morley, Al, Bert, and Frosty Trosdall. Bob Larson remembers crawling through the large air conditioning and heating ducts beneath the Cultural Hall floor to clean out the construction debris.
Marilyn Harding, who is here tonight, submitted this. "My husband and I were the first to have any kind of event held in the chapel across the street from the high school. Marilyn Parker and Glenn Harding, us, had our wedding reception on May 2nd, 1958, before the chapel was dedicated or had any lawn or landscaping done. We had to have special permission, and no one else had ever used the building. It was a wonderful reception in a brand new chapel. Having attended the other receptions in the little building up by Utah Avenue, it was a bit of heaven to top off our marriage at the Los Angeles Temple and return to a brand new chapel for the event."
November 23, 1958, Bert N. Whitney was sustained as bishop. Nevada State FTA Convention, November 20th, 1959.
Also in 1959, Alaska and Hawaii were admitted as the 49th and 50th states of the United States of America.
Bob Broadbent was the first mayor.
How many of us consider the Relief Society a club? Sister Leah Armbrust, the Relief Society president in 1960, submitted this article to the paper May 26, 1960. It beautifully describes the Relief Society, its purposes, and clearly ties in with the true meaning of a ward. All of us can think of a time that the dear sisters of the Relief Society have touched our lives in one way or another. Love, friendship, sisterhood, service are just a few words that describe some of the dearest women we have mingled with these past 75 years.
Lucy Brubaker submitted, "The one outstanding Relief Society president I remember most was Mary Edwards. I believe she was the Stake Relief Society president for about 20 years. A wonderful spiritual lady, always doing things for others, quilts and etc."
We have been helped in times of sickness, childbirth, accidents, loss of employment, loneliness, death, and downtrodden spirit.
From the Journal of Sister Luana Shamo, March 17, 1982. Therapy of Benj Woodbury this morning. He is a precious little spirit and progressing quite well after this past month of combined efforts of the sisters in the ward.
Relief Society provides classes such as home nursing, cooking, canning, sewing, cleaning, safety, auto repair, and finances.
Time management, international cultures, genealogy, knitting, photography, child and husband management. Remember those membership cards?
What about quilts? Quilts, and more quilts, hygiene kits, educational kits.
Luncheons, dinners, and parties. Could there ever have been a Dime-A-Dip without the Relief Society? The Dime-A-Dip was a great way to earn money for the building fund and also a great community event. People look forward to this wonderful dinner each month. Carolyn Barton said, "I love going to the Dime-A-Dip. It's the only time I got German chocolate cake. My grandma, Wilma Jenny, always served the pies and cakes there. Nobody else gives me German chocolate cake. My family doesn't like it."
Don Benson recalls, "My mother was active in the Relief Society forever. Her favorite activity was Dime-A-Dip. That was back when it really was a Dime-A-Dip. In reading her journals, the dip, as she called it, was a highlight. She cherished the friendships that were established at these wonderful events."
Lucy Brubaker also said, "I remember Glenna Snow as our Ward Relief Society president. Another wonderful lady. What a fun person. Calls herself Myrtle."
The love for many of the Relief Society women has been expressed in poetry and song. We have some copies near the timeline tonight. Lucille Mead, Thias Gibson. Some of the memories are very sweet.
Others a bit more humorous, such as for sale, for rent, or political signs, buckets of water, cockroach jello or ice cubes, horse corral pies, toilet paper, newspaper, the 11th commandment, fake court proceedings, many, many harmless practical jokes. The Relief Society sisters visiting the dam. What a wonderful organization provided for the women of our church.
May 27, 1962. The building is free of debt and is dedicated by Elder S. Dilworth Young. At 5 a.m. on September 14, 1963, the LDS chapel once again is loaded up and taken back to Las Vegas. It was sold to a Protestant denomination. They moved it to 25th Street and used it for many years for their meetings. Later, they turned it into a place for the homeless, and it is still being used for that purpose.
This is a photo taken by Marion Earl in 1987. What a life this little church building has had.
In 1966, Jacob Williams was sustained as bishop.
January 23, 1970, Joseph Fielding Smith becomes president of the church.
July 7, 1972, Harold B. Lee becomes president of the church.
January 7th, 1973, 2 wards created in Boulder City. First ward with Jacob Williams remaining as bishop. Second ward with Bryant Solomon sustained as bishop. This was very traumatizing and was like losing half of your family. The other 2 times weren't nearly as bad. Sister Lily Goff.
Margot Snowden submitted this picture and recalls, "This is the first and second ward combined choir for the first stake conference after the division. Sister Levitt continued to be the first ward choir director, and I the second."
December 30th, 1973, Spencer W. Kimball becomes president of the church. Spencer W. Kimball's motto was, "Every member a missionary." The ward has had many missionaries come and go, and yes, many of them did not wear name tags.
Cornelia Bates Madsen. As a senior in high school, I thought talking to the ward missionaries would be a good idea. After long question and answer sessions in our living room, I asked Daddy if I could be baptized. When he said yes, Mama asked if she could be baptized too. Bishop Leonard Stubbs became a good friend and example. Jerry Morley became our home teacher, continuing from about 1957 until Mama came to Provo in 2006, about 50 years.
March 17, 1974, Kenneth A. Simpkins is called as bishop.
Remember the days of going to the St. George Temple? It was our temple. What an honor to go to the dedication. Many of us were there.
On June 18, 1978, Bruce Alder is called as the bishop of the Second Ward, and on November 1979, Carl Snow is called as bishop of the First Ward.
Activities, activities, Activities.
Soup Goops.
Treks and plays.
Back East trips.
Pine Valley outings.
Christmas tree burns, picnics, and hikes.
Elders Quorum broom hockey.
Lake, ocean, and Mount Charleston.
Father and son outings.
Good cooks, great food, better company.
Ward Christmas parties. How many years did the bishopric have Grandma get run over by a reindeer at the Ward Christmas party?
One of the first callings Bishop Hardy made was to Paul Morley, building supervisor and protector. He is to turn out the lights every night and fill the font. Paul is still doing that calling to this day.
March 1984. 3 wards created in Boulder City. Fred Lasco sustained as bishop, 1st ward. Joseph Hardy remained as bishop, 2nd ward. Monty Morris sustained as bishop, 3rd ward.
Do you remember the excitement in the air when the Las Vegas temple was announced? Some church members were even looking for property right here in Boulder City for the temple to be built on.
Dean Jensen was one of the architects for this project.
November 16th through December 9th, 1989. What beautiful crisp fall days. So many of the ward members were part of the open house, whether it was booty duty or pointing and smiling all along the beautiful halls and rooms of this magnificent structure. December 16th, 1989, the dedication. What a beautiful day. I know my purse got stolen the week of the dedication. The only thing I was worried about was my tickets for the dedication for myself and my children. Thank goodness my purse was recovered, and I got it back with everything inside. It was a special day taking my older children with me to the dedication. We were in the room right next to the celestial room where the prophet was. Before going to the temple, one attends temple preparation classes. Look at this wonderful group of people that helped dear Sister Elva Pulsifer as she took these classes in preparation for her going to the temple for her own endowment for the very first time. She was so excited she even had her picture taken when she received her first temple recommend. She was one of Bishop Tobler's golden girls. They attended the temple together as a group as often as possible.
A special temple day for Relief Society sisters.
The ward has had many that have had the thrill, peace, excitement, and joy of being to attend the temple for the first time.
If you build it,
November 10th, 1985. Ezra Taft Benson becomes president of the church.
One common thread in all the memories sent in was the love and influence that teachers had on the individuals. There are Sunday school teachers, priesthood instructors, seminary teachers, primary teachers, Relief Society teachers, MIA instructors, young women's leaders, and scout leaders.
Do you remember your teachers? How many learned how to dance from Mabel Mitchell or Rion Pendleton? How many learned how to water ski from Charles Nelson or Monty Brubaker? How many organ and piano lessons have been taught? What about the great times in seminary with brothers Gibson, Morris, Broadbent, Stubbs, Tobler, or sisters Mitchell, Heaton, Buell, Slack, or Graff?
there were so many teachers and other members of our small ward who had an influence on me, and who helped shape both character and testimony. Many of their names have been forgotten. However, what I recognize today, decades later, that they helped in small but significant, almost imperceptible ways to gently ease me along the road toward conversion and a strong testimony. I will be forever grateful to them for what I learned, the testimony they helped me obtain, and for a lot of wonderful memories. Bob Larson.
And don't forget the librarians. We all need them sometime or another.
Example after example.
In 1986, Sister Elva Pulsifer was honored for teaching for 50 years. There's a story about how she influenced her students, even 50 years after they were in her class. At a session of either stake or ward conference, she was asked to give the prayer. She slowly worked her way up to the podium. The priesthood brethren helped her up the steps and to the microphone. At that time she said, "I want all my little children to get ready for prayer." It was quite the sight to see as all the men in the front folded their arms and bowed their heads just like they used to do in her classroom. These next few slides are pictures she took of her kids, a few of them that she taught throughout the years.